Hello everyone and welcome back to the garage and a new episode on the R80ST. Today I'm going to put the covers back together, replace those throttle cables because they're a bit damaged and old, clean all the electricals under the fuel tank, put the fuel tank back on and some fresh fuel, and let's hear it run. Let's do it. So here are my carbs, all cleaned, not like brand new but still pretty well cleaned. All the important bits are cleaned. It may look like it's all one together, but there's a split in this tissue, so this is my left carb, this is my right carb, and just in case you forget, I kept the bits grouped together, but just in case you forget which one's which, it's easy to tell from the body. The controls are towards the engine, but also on the choke you see a little stamp right there. This is the left hand side one and this is the right hand side one. There's an R marked right there, but it's a bit faded. So yeah, it's all ready to go back together. I do have one issue, and that is a partially stripped thread in that shaft. This has obviously been worked on. That's the original one with a little dot stamped on it, which goes above. Probably can't see that, but I'll have to take my word. And this one has a 15 marked on it, so they're slightly different. I'm guessing this may have been replaced in the past. And yeah, one of the threads is slightly stripped. So I might try to use some Loctite. I'm probably going to use Loctite on them anyway. I don't want them coming loose. But I'll see. If I feel I need to replace this whole shaft, I will. I'm not going to risk damaging the engine for it. But yeah, let's carry on for now. So what new bits do I have? Got a pair of new diaphragms. The old ones aren't actually ripped or torn or anything, but I think it's a good idea to replace them at this point. Got a new set of float bowl gaskets. New gaskets for the choke. And a set of O-rings, which I don't actually remember how they go, but I'll figure it out. So I'm going to start with the left hand side carb, and the first thing I'm going to do is assemble the main jet and its components. Just checking they're seated properly. Carefully install the O-ring on the main jet holder and try not to pinch it or damage it. Tighten it up, and it's ready to take the main jet with its crush washer. Before I install the main jet, I'm just going to double check one last time to see if the hole is clear and free of any debris. Next, I'm carefully sliding a new O-ring on the pilot jet and installing that as well. By the way, that aerosol can contains silicone oil, which is great for assembling O-rings. And next I'm going to install the float with its needle valve. The spin is knurled at one end, but just pressing it with a hard object is enough to take it home. Now I'm just installing the plug for the vacuum port, and next I'm going to install the pilot adjustment screw. Make sure the tip is clean, straight and not damaged in any way. And now I'm just going to drive it in till it's seated in its place and back it off 1.5 turns. Don't over tighten it as you risk breaking the tip. And now I'm gonna adjust my float level. The float should be parallel with the top surface of the carb. But I always find that doesn't work great for me. And what I do is I adjust it while it's on the bench to be parallel or close to it. But once the carbs are on the bikes with fuel in them, I take the float bowl off and I adjust it so that the valve shuts when the float is parallel with the carb. And I find that gives me a more accurate setting. I'm placing the new gasket carefully in the groove. I'm just checking that that passage is clear in the float bowl and put it on top with the spring clip retainer. And now I'm going to put the choke back together. And again, I'm starting by installing a new O-ring. Pop the disc back in its housing, making sure you get it in the right orientation. That dot faces the back of the carb or the back of the bike. Install the two halves of the lever, washer and the nut. It's important when you tighten the nut not to try to use the two cast studs to give you more leverage. That will probably break them off. Double check that it's spinning freely. And now before I install the new gasket, I'm just going to put a very thin smear of grease on the two mating surfaces. I find that works well for me, but I'm sure not everyone agrees with that. In fact, I know some people use gasket adhesive for this to keep it in place more securely, but I never found that to be necessary. Tighten the screws, check it one last time, and we're done with the choke. And now I'm moving on to the butterfly valve and its shaft. And again I start by installing a new O-ring. Pop the shaft in. Attach the bracket that holds it in place. And now I can slide the disc in place. Now this isn't actually a disc, that's why it's important to get the orientation right, which is with the dot facing towards you and up towards the top of the carb. And the reason for that is so it actually closes the bore while it's still at a slight angle. If you look at it from the side, you can see the edges are actually at an angle, they're not perpendicular to the faces. So I slide it in place, I install the two screws but don't tighten them yet. I use a light source underneath the carb to help me adjust and move around the actual butterfly valve until it actually seals all the way around the bore. Make sure your idle adjustment screw is out of the way for this. And once I'm happy with it, I nip the screws up so it doesn't move anymore, and I take one out at a time, put some Loctite on it and tighten it back in. You could also pin the back of the screw to make sure it doesn't come loose and damage the engine. One last check and I'm moving on to the slider and the diaphragm. Now the old diaphragms didn't look too bad, but I decided to put some new ones in anyway to make sure it's all good for a while. Take the 4 screws out and the ring that holds it in place. Put a bit of silicone oil again to help it find its place easier. Make sure you align the notch with the slot in the slider and then tighten it back up. Slide the whole assembly into the body of the carb, again making sure you align the notch with the slot. And secure the top cap in place. Don't forget to install the spring as well. So I got the second carb all done, everything's fine. And we had the problem with the shaft where the threads seemed to be damaged in one of the holes. And I tried to see if I can tighten this up, and as soon as I skip the thread, it's just spinning now. So we'll have to get a new shaft and then finish this job. So here's the new shaft for the carb. It looks really good, really nice quality. So I'm just going to install this quickly, same as I did the other one, and I can put the two springs in place as well. Just make sure everything moves freely and it's ready to go back on the bike. Before I do that though, I'm just going to wind the idle adjustment screw in a bit so it gives the bike a better chance of starting, and then I'm going to adjust these later on anyway. Now I'm attaching the cables to the carb. That's a new Van Hill Featherlight cable, a lot smoother and nicer to operate. Attach the choke cable as well. Slide on the fuel line. Pop it in place together with the tube coming from the airbox and tighten all the clamps up. I've installed the fuel tank as well, and I'm pouring some fresh petrol in it. Open the tap and watch the fuel flow nicely through the new fuel filter. Turn the ignition on and let's see what happens. And she fires right up. It's amazing. I'm really happy for that, even though my face doesn't show it. And the reason for that is because you can clearly hear the bike is only running on one cylinder. Which reminds me, I forgot to double check the float level. Apologies for not filming that bit, but I took the float balls off, readjusted the level, and let's see what happens now. And look at that, much better. I started on one cylinder again, but the second one kicked in very soon after, and I'm really chuffed with that. That's it. Bike's running pretty good on both cylinders. We're still gonna balance and tune the carbs in a different video. But that was the aim for today. Carbs are back together, it's all running, so I'll see you in a future video. Thanks for watching.